And we're live. Welcome back, everybody. Dipcatcher Radio with a special episode today. We're having our first actual live guest on the show. I think in the past people have hopped on, but never have we had just like a full-on discussion on this channel. I've usually been a guest on many other people's channels, but we're trying it out different. So today we have Maxim, who is an active member of the Hex, Hedrin, Icosa, kind of our broader ecosystem. He had, made some interesting content about Poly, and then also, brought up some, counterpoints to the narrative. And so we just thought we'd have him on and we can talk through these things and, kind of just share what we know and see, how we can create value. So thanks for joining us, Maxim.
Yeah, man, I'm really glad to be here. I think this is a great topic, and talking with you, going right to the sources should be good.
Yeah. So what got you into crypto?
Originally I got into crypto because I wanted to learn to trade, and this was in 2015, and I saw that I could trade Bitcoin with market orders, I believe, without any fees, and it seemed like a good way to also get in with less money and really have very little downside to trading. And so I was really in it for the ability to learn to trade rather than for any kind of philosophical values behind it. But over time, I actually really started to appreciate the idea of decentralization and really appreciate the thing itself, aside from the ability to just make short-term money. And that really resonated with me a lot. And so I ended up becoming a lot more of a holder in very early 2017. And ever since then, just been trying to learn and take advantage of the opportunity that I believe is there. And yeah.
Nice. And what got you into the Hex and Hedrin and Icosa world?
Yeah. So I followed Richard Hart from before Hex, and really appreciated him. I appreciate original thinkers, and he seemed very clearly an original thinker to me. He came at things from a different standpoint than I heard from other people, and I'm jealous for that myself. And when he started talking about coming out with his own token, that was immediately interesting to me. And of course, there was tons of FUD surrounding Hex, and I spent a lot of time trying to understand the arguments against it. And for the most part, they appeared emotional, and that's not really an explanation to me. It just tells me that this person feels a certain way, but I want to know why. And when I could understand the explanations, I tended to see that either the explanations were rational, but they were based on false presuppositions, like they didn't actually understand what Hex was, and so their arguments, if they had the right assumption about Hex, then their conclusion would be correct. But I did not see the right assumption. They did not understand what the project was. And a lot of people, there was a lot of explanations, and I basically felt that I didn't know what was going to happen with Hex, but I couldn't see a good reason to not invest. I thought this is another, Richard Hart's original. Here's an original take. I can't really compare this original idea directly to other things because it's original, but I also can't see good explanations why this won't work. And so I was really happy to invest in it. And the price, so I got in Hex on the first day, which the day after I was like, I think that was foolish.
Yeah.
Because there was at the very beginning, he made it an advantage. You basically got more hex per dollar in. Well, it's not more hex per dollar in, but more hex was available the first day.
Yeah,
and
which
so that
I thought was going to continue because it went from $1 billion to 500 million, and I was like, oh, day 3, 200. I literally thought it was like a daily happening. My dumbass.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I was foolish. And Richard Hart did that because he understood that people tend to get in on the first day. So he tried to make the supply for that day bigger to counteract that. But I think indirectly it actually incentivized people to get in even more on the first day. And I fell for that. And then I was like, oh, that was not smart. My
simpler times,
competition.
right? Much simpler times. It's
Yes.
that's because since then, that was it was so much has happened in crypto and in real life, and it's like it's pretty wild to think back at how simple those days were.
Yeah, I know. But then I bought, like, I saw the price going down, and I was like, great, I can make up for my less than ideal entry and dollar cost average as the price was going down, and that's what I did.
Nice.
And I didn't put that much money in. At the time, I tell everyone this, I felt like I was putting in a lot, but now I look back and was like, how did I think that was a lot? And I think I've talked about this too, but I had Ethereum when it was $8 and sold it all at 32 and got it back later on in 2017. And when Hex launched, we were in a bear market, and I'd watched my Ethereum go from roughly $1,400 down to under $100. Yeah. And I was like, shoot, I'm giving up my Ethereum for Hex. And I'm like, I'm selling the bottom basically. And so I think that was part of the emotional reason why I was like, this is so much I'm putting in here.
That makes sense. I hadn't really considered, that from that early Ethereum cycle, that there had to have been people that, had lived through that and were like, oh, I'm selling the dip. And I feel like that was like a big source of the wrong assumptions around Hex, where more people defending their own, like, either, from a competitive aspect because they are, they're already all in on something else and they don't want them to compete. And so
I think it's
a root of a lot of misunderstanding in crypto is that people intentionally misunderstand because it may be counter to what what team they're on.
It's the same thing. Like, people didn't like Bitcoin. Oh, it's the speculative thing. But there were some original thinkers that I think were looking at Bitcoin in the beginning kind of similar to how I was with Hex. They're like, well, this is a cool new thing. It'd be cool if this works out. Let's buy some, basically. Or they wanted to use it for the black market or whatever. They were relatively open-minded people. The ironic thing I find is those open-minded people, as Bitcoin became more popular, a lot of them have become, not all of them, but some of them have become closed-minded. And even though this crypto thing is taking off, now they're locked in. They own Bitcoin. They see the incentive. We want our Bitcoin to go up in value. And I think psychologically, they don't want other projects to do well in it. And it stops their mind from actually seeing potential value that is really there. And I feel the same way with, it's a natural incentive for communities to want their token to do well and everything else, to get no attention, all the money to go into their one thing. And I think sometimes it stops people from seeing other potential value just because they don't want it to be there. So they don't even consider what could be there. I see that within the Hex community. You see it everywhere. Like I get tweets all the time, if I say I bought Hedron, they're like, you're a plebe, you're not buying Hex. You hate Hex, obviously, because you bought Hedron instead of Hex. And it's fine. It's the way things go. But I know for myself, I want to make the best decision. I don't want to make the decision that, like, I want to be basically open-minded so I can consider what's actually out there and make the real best decisions. I don't want to be automatically caught up in, because I bought this one token, I will only consider that this token is it and never consider anything else. I don't want to fall for that myself. And really happy to be playing the Hedron and Icosa protocols. I think they're very speculative. I think we're with the big HSI days, I think we're going to have potentially less speculation in them, because we're going to see a meaningful game within the Hedron and Icosa system play out. And we're really kind of testing it. Like, will the Icosa parity How will it hold up? Will the HSIs be bought through this? Will we continue to address our Hedron inflation? We'll have an idea now if this system is going to hold up over time, because we're testing it in a way that we haven't really tested it yet, and it could be really good. It could go terrible. And I think there's likely outcomes that you can have educated guesses on what's going to happen. But for me, I still consider these projects relatively speculative. But I also see a really, really good upside. Like these tokens, Hedron and Icosa, can, if they work, I think the return on investment is going to be very good. It's just so for me, it's like, yes, this is speculative. The system isn't proven. We've seen algorithmic stable coins, which in my mind, Hedron and Icosa are a kind of algorithmic stable coin. We've seen those catastrophically fail. We've also seen them work. And
I mean, generally those things fail if they somehow incur a bunch of bad debt. But it's like even though there is a debt aspect to Hedron, but like it's not like it's accumulating bad debt. And really, it's like Icosa is accumulating bad debt, but then it sells the debt. And so it's like the system itself, you know, I think that it's like that algorithmic stablecoin is a good kind of description of it, because it's, you know, it's like there's the ones that try to peg to $1, there's ones that try to peg to other things, and this is like, it's kind of like a moving target. It's not like an arbitrary $1 per token target, and because that's a very difficult thing to do and to actually ensure that that's the case. And so you know, as the price, you know, as the prices change, it influences how people act in the, you know, how much HSIs people are going to mint into Icosa, or how much Hedron are they going to mint, how much Hedron are they going to advance, like all those things factor into those kind of levers. You know, but
it's more internally regulating than some stable coins, kind of or than some algorithmic stable coins. Like sometimes, you know, they have their own stable coin, but they're related to I don't know. They kind of they're the cool thing about this is it's all sealed projects, set code, and is going to do what it's going to do there. And it's all I don't know, its own system basically for the most part. Sometimes these contracts,
breaking the peg doesn't cause catastrophic failure. Breaking the peg just means that, okay, maybe a little bit less Icosa will be minted now than the supply, you know, the active circulating supply can kind of dwindle, and then it kind of restores. And so it's not like a broken peg is even a critical failure. It's just like, okay, some other dynamic is different for a while, and then the response to that will, you know, do whatever. And so, yeah, I mean, that's definitely how I see it. And I think that, I mean, kind of a combination of those two things about the, you know, like the competitive nature of just these markets, and then also like, you know, kind of protecting those dynamics. You know, that's why I kind of see why there has been pushback on poly, is because you know, it's like even though, you know, we're like Maximus in general is very Hedrin long, like, you know, Maxi's a major earner of Hedrin. You know, we made Hedrin a core part of the team earnings. Like in the first year, the team earnings are primarily Hedrin. And so it's like, you know, we're very, you know, in that we hadn't built anything related to the Icosa token yet. And so it's not like we have, you know, huge skin in the game from that angle. And also our it's like, you know, our stakes are native. And so, you know, we're not playing the Icosa game, you know, with the minting of Icosa.
Right.
And so we're kind of neutral. And so the response to that has been interesting.
It has.
It's like such a wide range of opinions on it.
Yes, I do appreciate though teams working with other teams, and I appreciate it even more because it's not very common that this happens. And, you know, we're like, your intent isn't like we're in this together and you have your own thing, and now you're coming over indirectly giving credit to the potential in another project. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of the awesome factors of of what DeFi means, where they're like, because in the real world, like imagine if like, you know, JP Morgan wanted to build some financial product that packages and like does something different to a product sold, by Goldman Sachs. Like the effort of like actually coordinating that, where like those two kind of independent financial products can operate, is huge. Whereas in DeFi, it's like it was as simple as just importing the contract, calling it by address, and then it's just like you can use it, and that's how they're it's a really powerful. It really lowers that barrier of kind of, even though it's I wouldn't even say it's like collaboration, because it's not like it's not like it's like if I had a question for Alex, I'd DM him and he would generally answer it and give kind of piece of advice and stuff, but it wasn't necessarily like direct collaboration in terms of like what was built, how it was built,
right?
And
no, you're
like
separate teams, but
on
you're
his
communicating and you're trying to work together. I think.
And it's and also because there's huge overlap in the communities that we reach, and so it's like we're all kind of in the same boat here, and but there certainly are there certainly is a competitive aspect to it, and I think it's a good thing. Like the ecosystem would be weak if there wasn't strong competition within it. Like there needs to be strong competitors, and so I think it's actually like a really good dynamic, kind of how Maximus and Hedrin kind of fit in together. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what from like so one thing that stood out to me in just the discussion in general is like the importance of the Icosa auctions in the just kind of like the long-term health of the Hedrin economy. And so my understanding on that is that just because new Hedron can always be minted, and it is less than it was before. Like as these first 15 years, like all the stakes that started before, especially before big payday, as all those age out, it's like way less of an issue down like after 15 years. But in that meantime, because there's so much issuance from that early cohort that got Hex at 1,000x lower price and T-shares at a 2.5x lower price, and they got their 10x bonus, like that cohort of users, there's just so much supply going to them that it needs strong countering, either from from buyers, or just like those Hedron that those people had need to be gone. And so like that's why, to me, that's why Icosa was built in general, was to kickstart that liquidation system. Because like do you know how many liquidations there were before Icosa
Not very many.
Yeah, like 29.
Yeah,
there have only been 29, and so there is not that strong deflationary pressure. And while there is deflationary pressure from like the benevolence of the burning and stuff, that's not. It's like that supply, although it's burnt, it wasn't like that was actively competing as a seller anyways. And so it's like as good as if it was never burned in the first place. It's like if it wasn't selling, it's not pushing price down. And so that's kind of been my perspective on the Icosa, like why the Icosa system is there. And my main thing that I think that is the only trouble with that is that it, like the issue that I have beating the drum about for a year now, is that small individual hex stakes may be infeasible to end as hex stakes. And so that was like what drove us to build this. We saw these auctions coming out, and it's like, while although a lot of people are going to sell back into Icosa, a lot of people are just going for the stake, because if you can get a cheap, it's like you can get a cheap T-share for a hex stake on through that auction, you can. And we wanted to help those people not be, who are holding those HSIs with the intention of just holding the stake. We wanted those people to not get be impacted by holding the bag on something that may cost more than it's worth. So that was like the main thing, why we wanted to target this particular group. And it wasn't necessarily like has anything to do with the Icosa system. It was just like, for people that demand the hex stake, this is a solution that's basically is like a copy paste prior solution.
I think that people that traded there and are trading their Hedron for Poly are probably going to do well. I think that I think this might be one of the more return on investment pools that you guys have done, because I think the chance that you get more hex for the dollar in is higher, because I think the auctions are going to be, I think you're going to be relatively competitive and going to get basically hex for less than its dollar value. And the poly is going to be backed by that. And I think it's probably going to do well for the people that have traded. It's all speculation, but I just see the likelihood is pretty good right now.
Yeah, I mean, also, I mean that it really just comes down to how, like, this is definitely the riskiest asset that we've launched. Maybe team,
Yeah.
I'd say team perhaps is maybe riskier. Um, this is like the riskiest pooling asset because there's all these unknowns. You don't know how many T-share days that the stake portfolio is going to be worth. You don't know because a component of it is the Hedrin stake yield. You don't know what the Hedrin stake yield is going to be.
Right.
And so as the market prices in the reality, because it's like up until bidding, it's the 1-to-1 rate, and then maybe as the bidding is happening by the executor, perhaps the market is like fearful, or and there's gonna be craziness, and then as soon as it kind of becomes clear what the net asset value is, then maybe that's a new type of benchmark that price trades around. And like, because there's all these unknowns and they only get discovered as time goes on, I think you're right in that it has that like wild just repricing potential compared to like with like Maxi. It's like, okay, the hex is in, the hex earns every day at a strong rate. You kind of know what it's going to be. This one's a lot more up in the air.
I think it's likely that you guys are going to be pretty competitive going for the HSIs. I don't think the HSIs right now are going to be, I just don't feel a really, really strong FOMO from the community on buying these HSIs.
Yeah.
And I don't think currently, and this can totally change, like what I think would change the FOMO is if people start posting on Twitter or places, I got 500,000 hex for, significantly less than the value. I think that may cause people to, well, I want to be a part of this too. But I just don't feel a lot of FOMO from the community right now. I think the competition, it appears to be relatively low. And so that basically means
the Maxim pools absorbed a lot of that demand for the liquid staked hex. Like, we just absorbed 810 million hex worth of demand for liquid tradable staked hex. And so it's like, and in addition to the 300 million hex in Maxi, so it's like over 1 billion hex that would have been in this market category is already already allocated. And so that I think is you're right there, and that was part of why we thought this was like there's opportunity here, is because it's like we clear a lot of the competing forces are they staked their hex, they minted the pools, and there's only so much liquidity there for people to like switch from that into this. While we have seen people like selling their Maxi at like a huge premium and then to get into poly and ground zero, we have seen some of that. But there's only so much liquidity to support that, and so it's like now anything new into these auctions that's like fresh. It's either Hedrin that people already had, or people selling their hex for Hedrin that they already had, or selling hex they already had for their Hedrin, and then participating or minting. And so
I think it's likely that you guys are going to be backed by more value than the people paid to get in. I think the ratio is going to be better. I think it's very likely.
It's a tough thing to like. I mean, it's not if your decision is that you want to roll the Icosa. If you want Icosa as a result of these HSIs, poly is in no way for you.
Yes, I think that's where. So to me, I think that people are going to probably do well. When they traded their Hedron for poly, they're probably going to end up with more value than they started with in the long run, and maybe probably in the short run. The question is, would they have been in a better position without poly doing the same thing themselves?
And or just holding the Hedron. That to me is the main competitive factor. Is like, would they have just holding and doing nothing? Because that's like the default, right?
And that's the thing that I would be pushing, except that I feel that narrative is pushed very hard. And so I think for whatever reason, that is already where people are going, and the way the system works is it kind of counterbalances itself. If everyone's for holding Hedron and not getting HSIs, then the best thing to do was to get HSIs. If everyone's for HSIs, well then hold, get your yield, let the Hedron be burned while you have a greater portion of the supply than you would otherwise have. And it really is, for me, I'm like speculating, like I don't feel a strong desire for people to get a bunch of HSIs. But at the same time, we're going to be able to see, like we'll be able to watch what's actually happening. We can see the bids, and if they're, we can, if people aren't staked through it, they can act. The cool thing about the Icosa staking pools is if your time's up, you can pull out if you want to, but you can stay in there until you want to bid. So you have some flexibility that is a little bit original, I think, to the Icosa contract in that sense. Like you don't have it in stake. You don't have a penalty for keeping your stake going. You're kind of incentivized actually to not pull it out. And that's a cool advantage too. So you can basically leave your options open and kind of have your cake and eat it too. Like you can pull it out when you see an advantage to do so. And if there's no advantage, you still get yield.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And that's, that's probably a reason not to mint polys. Like if you want to be able to, make that decision in real time, as opposed to, just
yes,
predetermining that like the strategy you want to implement is that we're targeting these HSIs because it's, we may be able to get a big discount on these stakes. And as the hex earns yield in Hedrin every day, add the Hedrin to the I think I've heard people describe it as like the seed, or like that initial, like locking in your points in your big Hedrin stake early and then adding to it as you go on. So that's basically, so for it's like in poly, it's like we just kind of simplify all that decision making, and it's like, because that's a decision you might have made on yourself. It's one of the many good decisions that you could make, and so it's just like you're choosing one of them, and you don't even have to worry about it. And so there's that the factor of there, and what makes me feel confident about that strategy is that I don't think I hear any single person talking about accumulating the HSIs and using the Hedrin that they earn to build up a Hedrin stake. Like I haven't heard that from anybody. And so I've heard everybody say, oh, buy back, sell the Icosa for Hedrin, buy more, like that whole roll forward forever thing. It's like, you hear every single person talking about that. You hear other people just saying, hold the Hedrin. No, like, and so I feel like we're in like a high growth channel that it's not already crowded from everyone that's going to be competing for, okay, like where, maybe some fraction of the people that are implementing the Icosa roll forward forever strategy, like only some portion of those people is it going to be feasible, because it's like if everyone's competing to sell the Icosa for Hedrin to start bidding again, then it's like, okay, some people are going to capture that, other people are not. And so that one's kind of crowded. The Hedron one, it's kind of crowded, and only gets more crowded over time because, just as these bonus Genesis T-share stakes are continuing to mint their Hedron. Sometimes I'm shocked at how much it is. Sometimes it's like, is this real? Like, it's one of those airdrops. And
that's one of the things that I'm watching in the project is we kind of talked about this, but I feel that Hedron needs to be burned. It like the staking's great. It's in a sense kind of a burn. In the sense that the reason I want Hedron to be burned is because I want to make sure that demand can outgrow supply. If you keep adding to supply, it's harder and harder for the price to increase. You just need more and more demand for that to happen. Staking kind of works because it pulls the supply off the market, which works with the supply and demand. It can help price. I just feel like, kind of like we talked about before, the inflation of Hedron is pretty meaningful. It's a pretty
You know what it is right
dramatic.
now, like on an annualized basis?
I actually don't. I haven't quantified it, but you can just see, for example, like what happened to the Hedron price before Icosa. And like I wasn't that interested in Hedron before the Icosa contract, because it like I was holding my Hedron, but I was like, I don't realistically see how this is going to just massively turn
Yeah.
around. The Icosa project came out and added some real potential, and the staking's great, but I still feel like basically be, because of the 10x Hedron bonus, we really we need to burn a bunch of Hedron. And I don't even see right now, for me, this first 90 days burning enough Hedron. Like if we have our total supply of Hedron is over 110 trillion.
Yeah, it's like
If we
126.
burn 1 trillion Hedron, which sounds like a lot, and you see it, what that would do for the pool yields, it's going to be good. But that's not even 1% of supply. And you have people getting 10x Hedron bonuses. Like, I would want to see like 10% of supply addressed or something like that. And it's okay. It just for me, I guess accentuates why I want the HSI buyback to be used. I want HSIs going through there so that the auctions keep happening and we keep addressing the Hedron supply and give people a reason to burn more Hedron.
Yeah.
Which is really like what I think you heard me talk about. One of the which I think is really really good, if we can clarify some of both of our thoughts on this. But one of the reasons why I'm okay with recycling old HSIs, I basically think that for the Hedron Icosa system, the need for burning Hedron is really strong. And whether we burn it through new HSIs or old, we kind of need everything. We need a lot of HSIs to be burned, to go through the HSI buyback and the Hedron to be burned, because we're so far out of whack. I think we kind of need that, the buyback to be used, in the more the better is basically how I see it.
Who do you think is like responsible for making that happen?
So in a sense, I would say that
As community members?
responsible isn't, I don't think, in a sense, the sign of a good system is a system where it incentivizes good behavior. And if it's someone doing it because it helps and not because it's better for them, I would say the system is not going to last. You cannot have a system long-term work if it's reliant on altruism, if it's reliant on selfless acts. You cannot rely on like that. It will not work. It has to be reliant on people doing selfish acts. Those selfish acts have to help the system. And if this system is reliant on altruism, it will not work. And so in a sense, I would say it's a fair question, but at the same time, I'd be like, if that is the question, if then the system's not going to work. Like if that's what it relies. So I don't almost want to be thinking of it as what should the community do to help the community. I would want to look at it as what are the incentives to do a particular action. Do it because it's good for you. If that breaks the system, then I probably shouldn't be playing this game. It will not last long term. Like you don't want to rely on selfless acts. It's like someone buying their own token because not because they get anything from it, but because it'll help the price. Like that, how long can that continue? Like it won't work.
Yeah, because it's like when you as like the individual do that, it's like, yeah, and even this is why I've like definitely slowed down on, like I used to be, kind of parroting the narrative about like, that we need to lock up as much hex as possible, 5555, and literally we even launched Maxi. But I've been kind of shifting back on that because just after seeing how hex has operated for 3 years now, I've seen that the people that benefit the most from everyone locking up 5555 are the people that don't lock up 5555. And so like like and I think that
Yes.
that's, you know, like kind of like a form of like a negative externality. You know,
Yeah.
it's like kind of like at whose expense does it come at? And so it's like, you know, it's like um you know, the Hedrin burning aspect of it, it's like the people that benefit from that burn aren't necessarily the people that are causing the burn to happen. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like a almost like a conflict of interest there,
Yep.
with, you know, just kind of like who's
And the
incentivized to do what.
you're right. The system needs to be set up so it's actually in your best interest
Mhm.
to stake 5 5 5 5.
Yeah.
Like it needs to be like, if it really is set up so that delayed gratification is in your best interest, it'll probably work.
Mhm.
If it's
Yeah.
not, then like it's not going to work. And if people are doing it just because, yeah, if they're not actually going to be better off for doing it, it's not going to work long
Mhm.
term.
Yeah.
It
But I actually do I don't actually think that the Hedron like runaway inflation is necessarily that bad, because, you know, the inflation is, you know, it's good if you're out earning the inflation. Like if you are earning at a higher rate than that average inflation rate, it's like your piece of the pie is at least staying the same.
yeah.
Inflation's really bad when like your piece of the pie is static and then everyone else is growing and yours is
Yes.
getting smaller. And
Yeah.
so like I think maybe it's bad for like newer people where like they really don't have a chance to out earn the inflation, because you
Right.
can't get bonuses, you can't get those ultra cheap T shares that are aged, you know, a
Yep.
thousand days by now. You can't get that now, and so it's like it sucks for new users, which could worsen the
Yeah.
prospect for coming in, because really like the thing that solves all is just buyers. Like if there's fresh demand where people want to hoard the
Yep.
token, it's like that can kind of counteract any other negative effect of just the supply issuance.
Yep.
You know, but it's like that poor supply issuance. It makes it worse of us. It worsens the sales pitch, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that uh I feel that we do need to burn more Hedron. Also, like what you're saying is right. Like you kind of want to, generally speaking, look at your ability to accrue an inflating token. You want to ideally be at the same rate of accrual as inflation or greater. Otherwise, you're just, you know, your portion of supply is shrinking and you're probably worse off in the long run. I think Hedron is a little bit unique though, because the price of Hedron is so far below what it theoretically should be that, for example, we have a whole value add of the Hedron system that's not being used because the price is low. We're not using the ability to borrow against our hex stakes. And I would like to see the value of Hedron rise so that that whole part of the system is used. And
Mhm.
and that's a reason why I feel this first year of Icosa project, I really want to see a lot of Hedron burned so
Mhm.
that we can get those bonuses, those Hedron bonuses under control, have price rise, and start burning Hedron even through a whole different aspect that we're not even using right now, with the ability to borrow, which I would love to borrow,
Mhm.
but it doesn't I just can't get enough value to
Yeah.
borrow against it. And I would like to see that as soon as possible be part of the system. I would like to see
Mhm.
that be a value.
Yeah, I mean, Hedron's a tough token to borrow, especially now seeing a pump from the lows to now, which is like, you know, 10x at least. The like something that can just run in
Yeah.
a matter of weeks, like, or at least in like the matter of your like repayment
Yeah.
schedule time frame that you're on. The like that's a tough thing to borrow,
Well,
because you
you don't
borrow
want to
your repayment.
sell
Yeah.
and then owe 10 times more than you sold it at.
Yeah.
And I don't, yeah, that's a good reason to also not want to borrow right now.
Mhm.
I don't think it makes sense, like,
Yeah.
for the exact reason you said, and even more so because you're backing it with something with so much more value than the amount that you got for it, basically.
Mhm.
And you're risking your hex stake for something so much less value than your hex stake.
Yeah.
I would like to see that. Like I said, I would like to
Mhm.
see that that parity reached the Hedron versus max length hex
But
stake, I
what's
think.
tough about it is that at each like incremental level that Hedron goes up relative to Hex and makes that borrowing more attractive, that just invites borrowing, which brings supply from the future to the present, and then sell. Like you only borrow to sell, and so it kind of normalizes itself too. Like it can't.
Yep.
It like it would be it would require a huge number of just fresh incoming people that come into Hedron, buy it, and simply stake their Hedron and do nothing. Like that is probably the main group that really is going to drive the price up. That will unlock a like something where it's feasible and profitable to borrow extensively, but the act of everyone borrowing doesn't just like take the price down to levels where it's not feasible to borrow anymore. So like to me it's like I would think that the main way to drive the Hedron price to levels that unlock those benefits, it's like I think the burn it might make it easier to get there, because now that's just like less Hedron for sale that could be competing as the new buyers come in. But I mean, it really all kind of comes down to that. Like you want people to be buying and hoarding Hedron, and I think that's where Poly actually really benefits and helps make that thing happen, is because we're by not sucking money out of the Icosa ecosystem, it makes it so that it's more likely to invite continued HSIs to be rolled through
I
there.
agree with you.
And then also the
I
Hedron, like right now, 16, like when you mint your poly, you vote on how much is simply staked and how much is going after HSIs. And so we're starting out with what would be something like the 10th largest Hedron stake. And we're hoarding that for 15 years, not competing, not breaking off and doing other. We're just simply building up that Hedron stake. So it's like we're providing massive Hedron price support that's not like really diluting away from the other
yes.
competitive areas in there, like
Right.
Icosa. And so it's like I feel like we're like things like Poly are actually like a really positive thing, for that purpose, because the like the, it seriously not only through the burning of the tokens that are bid, but through the hoarding of hoarding of tokens, staking them. So we're competing for the stake yield there, but we're hoarding those coins on a 15-year schedule. I don't think anywhere
Right.
has anyone with a contract committed to staking Hedron for 15 years, other than Maxi, which is holding the Hedron for 15 years, not even staking, and then now Poly. So, I
Yes.
feel like
So
things like that
what
are powerful forces.
right, what you have done is you've made it for more valuable for other people to basically take advantage of the HSI buyback, and you've made it more valuable because since you guys aren't selling HSIs through the HSI buyback, dumping your Icosa on the market, you're not being a part of what's going to break the Icosa parity. You're enabling other people to take advantage of that. And Gold Key was saying that he thought that was a good thing because ideally we want new HSIs to be created, go through the HSI buyback. We want basically to incentivize more hex stakes to be max length. And I agree that that's true. Like you guys are enabling the ability for other people. You're incentivizing the potential for other people to put new hex stakes through the system. And I think that is like the ideal is that new HSIs are going through the HSI buyback because that's bullish for hex, which is related to the price of Hedron and Icosa, and it does burn Hedron.
Mhm.
Like, and then also since you're not using the Icosa staking pool, it also incentivizes people to buy. If the Icosa parity breaks to the downside, there's a more incentive than otherwise probably to buy up the Icosa price, because if they can stake that Icosa in the Icosa staking pool and you guys as a relatively big player aren't playing that pool, they're going to get more yield than otherwise. This is me trying to make an argument for why Poly can help the system.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think for
What do you think?
go
Do you
ahead.
think are there any negative externalities about Poly?
Uh, so I think one of the main questions for me is what is the value of burning burning Hedron now, and who cares about new HSIs going through the system? We just need HSIs period going through the HSI buyback.
Mhm.
And are we, which like is max length staking new hex more valuable than getting the Hedron inflation more under control? Which one is more valuable is really part of the question for me.
Mhm.
And I don't know the answer.
Mhm.
My intuition is Hedron is accruing at a very quick rate. The system itself of Icosa and Hedron is not going to do well if Hedron does not get under control. And so I lean towards the more HSIs can go through. I don't care if they're recycled or new, probably
Mhm.
the better. But I also recognize, for what it's worth, one of the incentives to put your HSIs through the HSI buyback is the Icosa parity remaining. What I see stopping that from happening is we need a lot of buy pressure during these HSIs for Icosa. No one's going to put their HSI. There's a lot, like, there's arbitrage opportunities
Yeah.
if the
But if the
parity's
price
there.
is way lower, you're not going to turn your HSI
Right.
worth $10,000 into $7,000
Exactly
Icosa.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. If you can spend $7,000 for a $10,000 HSI, and you can get $10,000 out of it through the HSI buyback, you're able to arbitrage and continue to recycle Hedron back again towards more HSIs. It'll have the tendency to push the value of the HSI close to the value of what was actually paid for it, as long as people can arbitrage that opportunity. What I currently see as one of the um, pieces of the puzzle that I think that is the most hard to make happen is buy pressure for Icosa during the HSI buybacks. That's one of the biggest I don't want to say problems, but it's like the piece that I think is going to have the hardest time
Mhm.
being maximized. I don't think people recognize how likely it is that Icosa parity is breaking to the downside. And for the people that do, if that happens, I think they're going to do well,
Mhm.
because like it's just amazing how much potential Icosa sell pressure we're going to have during the HSI buybacks. There's just not a lot of liquidity in Icosa right now. Like,
Mhm.
there's
Yeah.
only, last time I checked, there's only 500 and something thousand Icosa not staked.
Mhm.
And if someone took one of those 10 million HSIs, gave it to the HSI buyback, that's 300,000 Icosa,
So
roughly
it's
300.
increasing by 60%.
Yeah, and if they want to sell that, like, they
Yep.
just obliterated the price of Icosa, and that's an extreme example. It just doesn't
Yeah.
take very many. Like,
Yeah.
6,000
Right.
Icosa yesterday sold on the market, dropped the price over 1.6%. That's just 6,000. That that's
Mhm.
that's that's a HSI worth roughly 200,000 hex.
Mhm.
Gives you like 6,000 something Icosa, which moves the price.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's not very many. That's a tiny percentage of the HSIs that are coming up. And
And
we
also people whose Icosa 90-day stakes, who are generally the larger guys, those ones that are ending here in a little less than a week.
Yeah,
Now that is supply that is liquid, while they, maybe earn more
yeah,
yield by keeping stake through the burning events
yeah,
and stuff. But like, that's money. I mean, 90 days ago is a whole different time, and everything else is
yeah.
wrecked.
I
And
don't think many of those people are going to sell their Icosa. And I see that the Icosa people get from HSIs is so much greater than the yield that they've gotten in Hedron.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of people have said that, and just for me personally, I don't see that as a huge threat.
Mhm.
Um, but you're right, it is. Like, people are they have the ability to sell that, and they have the ability to put that in the Icosa staking pool.
Mhm.
But I still feel that it's a relatively small addition relative to the potential of what someone can get from an HSI in Icosa. Like if you have to have many billions of Hedron to get 2,000 Icosa yield, and like that's 2,000 Icosa is worth like 70 an HSI of like 70,000 hex. Like I'm more concerned about the HSIs. I think they're going to inflate supply a lot more than the yield people have right now.
Okay, that makes sense. Especially if people can get them at discounts.
Yes.
Yeah, shit. I hadn't even really considered it from that angle yet. About the like, I don't know why I was more focused on because we extended the minting an extra effectively 2 days to capture, so that we could both have our Hedrons like stake locked in on the first day of auctions winning. Like when people start running loan liquidity exit, we wanted to be live during that time,
right?
And then
which I think was a wise move on your part. Like that makes perfect sense to me.
And also when I did the numbers on the number of stakers that there were day one Hedron stakers in Icosa on the Icosa launch day that fall into the 90-day lockup who hadn't added capital and extended it. There was something like 2 trillion Hedron that was available to be ended. And when you look at the Hedron supply, like I kind of do differentiate the source address from, while like I know that they absolutely can sell those tokens, like that is entirely at their discretion what they do with those coins. I generally view those as non-circulating, kind of, and that's 44%. And so that remaining, 2 trillion, coins that are spread out over what, like 100 or over 60 million. So like 2 over 60 is like 2 over 60 is like 3% or so. So like that's a huge amount of the Hedron actively circulating speculative supply that is coming unlocked on that day. And that to me is significant, and we're hoping to absorb a lot of that, because that could hurt the Hedron price. If those people were just if those what percent of those people are going to be ending their stakes and selling the news on the auctions, right? It's like we have a very buy the rumors, sell the news heavy community, and there's going to be a lot of that.
I feel that for what it's worth, I've felt that if I was someone that was not for the long term, like I wasn't sold on the idea that Hedron is going to be this massive accruing value over time, and Icosa was like, these projects are going to do awesome over time, and I wasn't so interested in actually playing the contracts. I was just looking at, cool, I have a bunch of hex. Who gives a care about Hedron? I think that is a certain amount of people. If I was them, especially if I was a bigger holder, when would I look to sell? I would look to sell during the HSI auctions. I would look to sell while there's theoretical demand for Hedron for poly. And I'm expecting, that just seems so obvious to me. It seems obvious to me that there's people like that are not playing the system, just trying to sell Hedron. And I would, if I was them, I'd be looking to this time to sell. I'm expecting Hedron sell pressure in the time we're in now, and especially during the beginning of the auctions. Otherwise, I'd be very bullish on Hedron. In my opinion, also for what it's worth, I don't consider that a bad thing. I think the Hedron price being low during auctions will probably just result in what I want to see happen, more of Hedron being burned, because if the number of Hedron it takes dollar-wise to match the HSI dollar value is higher, or if the amount of Hedron, number of Hedron is higher, it's going to result in more Hedron being burned, and indirectly whales being selfish, or sharks or whatever, dumping their Hedron then is actually going to theoretically should in the long run be good for Hedron, because more of it will be burned. And I would love to see, like, in a weird way, I would love to see the Hedron price low during auctions and just see more of it be burned because of that. And
more people can afford it, and then if Hedrin price is low, then that means would that mean more is burnt? Because if Hedrin price
so.
is low, then it would take more Hedrin to buy an HSI.
Yes, exactly.
Like minimum value. Well, at least that minimum bid, which is very small.
Right. Because I think the way people are probably going to look at it is a $10,000 HSI. What's the dollar value of Hedron?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if it's 1 billion or 10 billion. If it's $7,000 worth of Hedron for a $10,000 HSI, they're probably going to still do it. And so I would like, $7,000 worth of Hedron to be 7 billion Hedron instead of
I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Yeah. You're definitely right on that. I mean, I hadn't, I guess, until talking to you, I never really, considered the Hedron inflation too big of a problem. I've always just been like, oh, it's just going to get priced in. It's already being priced in. Like, that's just normal. Like, it's like, because it's known, that's the thing, is like, as long as it's known in advance, it's like, it's not like it's sneaking up on anybody. It's not like it's suddenly happening, and everyone knows it already. And so it's basically priced in, and like, maybe the price would be higher had there been less, future inflation and, to be looking forward to. But then, it's like every day, that's what makes me, but like, think the time, like, I'm not too concerned with the Hedron price now or in like the shorter term, but like, to me, especially with Maxi, because we got in at the 5x bonus, and it was like one of the largest stakes after big payday. So Maxi itself is one of the largest earners of Hedron. And by the time it ends, all of the pre big payday, very low price, very low T-share rate, high bonus stakes that earning most of the Hedron, they will have already aged out by then. And so it's like, by the time the Hedron, wallet that I look at is the Maxi one, and as that one, by the time that comes around, it's like, whatever happens between now and then, it's kind of going to be already kind of priced out. And then at that time, inflation may be, relatively small compared to what it is today. So that's kind of at least what I look forward to, but that's in a long time, and that doesn't really, not a very compelling sales pitch.
So I think there's some differences. Let's see. Yeah, I think one thought is, I think I should quantify what the inflation rate of Hedron is to try to like give a better, more clear explanation, and even possibly show to myself more clearly what my intuition is telling me.
Here we can do a quick cut. So 10 million, there's like, so right now, so back in the envelope estimations, there's 10 million, about 400,000 T-shares currently. And so that's times 1,000 on B shares. And then, so that's per day. And then so the average bonus is probably like maybe 6 or 7, because like most of the T-shares are old. So let's just give it a 7x bonus. So that is 72 billion Hedron mintable per day at the current, rate. So just annualize that times 365. That is 26 trillion per year. And then the annual, so there's 112 Hedron, 112 trillion. So 3, 6, 9, 1, 2, 3. So that's like 23% annual inflation right now.
Is that, you took what total T-shares did you use? Was that the HSIs, or is that of Hex period?
Total Hex T-shares.
Okay. Yeah. Really? That's less than I would have expected.
Mm-hmm. Well, so but that includes, when you calculate the source address, if you calculate like real world users, coins, which comes out to about 60 trillion. Let's see. So 112 trillion. Let's change that to 60.
How many
like
T-shares? How many T-shares did you calculate again? What was that first number? How many T-shares do we have?
400. That was the last I remembered looking at the Hex daily.
10 million.
Stat. Yeah, 10.4 million is what I recall it being last I looked. shares. Let's see. Yeah, on day 1071, there are 10.424. So it's a little higher than 10.424 times 1,000 times average bonus of 7 times 365 divided by the 60 trillion tokens that are like user tokens and not the.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's high. It's certainly high. It's higher than 3.69%. And but it's, so what that means is that if you as a, Hedrin holder, if you're growing it faster than that, meaning if you're getting if I mean, we kind of determined there that we just, our random guess on what the average bonus is, we'd have to be more methodical about that to actually get it. But the 7, the 7 bonus, 7x bonus,
Right.
wait, actually, okay, no, so that would actually be that the average is 6 because of how like you add 1. So
I think that's a good number.
yeah,
I mean, we're just guessing.
That's one of the toggles, but at most it's around there. At most, say the average was 10, even though it's not. Like a maximum value is 63%.
So you're seeing 25 trillion a year.
Yeah, 25.
So roughly 25% a year.
Yeah,
that is less than
it's like 38
would have guessed.
38 trillion.
Interesting.
Right. So 100 million, 100 billion, trillion, 38 trillion. If assuming the 10x bonus. So I mean, it's mainly driven by what you think that average bonus is, but somewhere between say 20 and 40 trillion per year.
Okay.
And so that is substantial relative to the active circulating supply, and it's substantial relative to the liquidity pools.
Yes.
But again, a lot of that Hedrin, it's not necessarily being minted every day. So that's like the max. That's like a upper range on what it could be. Maybe the actual realized inflation is something smaller, but
and we're watching relatively big hex players not mint Hedron.
Mm-hmm.
Like supposedly the 80 million hex that was sold yesterday did not mint Hedron, which I was, selfishly happy to see.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's good. I would say that's bullish, more bullish than I would have expected.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have more than 20, 30% adoption a year. I don't know. Because I don't know. I think another thing is if we don't have the HSIs, we don't have the HSI buyback used, we do not have yield in the pools. We don't have reason to buy Icosa. We don't like the Icosa. The reason to buy Icosa and bring the Icosa back to parity is related to the yield in those pools too, which most meaningfully comes from the auctions. I just want to see. I want to look forward to another 90 days after this 90 days of yield and auctions in burning of Hedron. We'll see how this all works out. Like I'm trying to be as realistic as I possibly can.
Yeah.
I don't want to be bearish or bullish or unless the explanation I have based on the clearest view of reality is telling me one or the other.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on in your assessment of the situation. Is that like there's these kind of competing dynamics, of the the Hedron supply, and then this the amount of HSIs being rolled through the system, and how that impacts the Icosa supply, and how that impacts the whole flow of the thing. But at least we found out that while the inflation of Hedron is high, perhaps you said it's not as high as you maybe felt like just on your back of the envelope, just thought.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a big number. I mean, it's a relatively big inflation rate.
Yeah.
And fortunately, that will drop off because the who knows how long these people are staked for with the 10x bonus, for example. The longest, of course, is 15 years, which is a relatively long period of time. But I have a feeling that it's not all that long. And it'll slowly drop off. I just want to see that those 10x bonuses eliminated from supply. I want to see that I think is going to basically be what's needed for parity price, for the Hedron parity price to be reached. If you have so much more supply than you can get right now for your hex stake, like if you're competing against 10x multiples and you're getting the current 1x multiple, it's just very unlikely that the parity is going to be reached. And I would like to see it burned, so that the newly minted Hedron is competitive. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a win for the people that have those bonuses. But the system might break because of it too. Like if there's not enough incentive to keep using the system, then it's not going to work and the system won't have value.
Yeah. That's, it's all kind of the game of the markets, right? It's like, are the assets going to be in demand, to support the supply assurance? And, it's kind of,
I was really surprised when Alex came out with Hedron and gave people the potential for a 10x bonus. I was like, that's one of the bigger incentives to join early than I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I think Alex is clever, and it's interesting. I think he could have got a lot of adoption with a lower number.
Yeah.
But hey, I got the 10x bonus. So
it's impossible to know how it'll play out until after it's done. And the reason why, like with all of like I like how all of our coins are a constant 1-to-1 mint across the whole mint phase, where there's no like day one people get like a massive advantage over the remainder. The main thing, I guess the bonding curve there, or like the change, is just like the price. So if you're a new person coming in, like whatever the price was on the day that you got your coins, like if you're counting that as your cost basis, that's, your starting point. So that's kind of the only, variation in that performance. And part of that is to kind of just leave that meat on the bone in the future. Because like if some group of people just got such a massive discount, then it's like that much harder of a sales pitch later on, because now you have to compete with that user. And so that's why, but I mean, I guess with the water token, which is like the Poly Maximus executor, it was just like a gas fee donation pool. Like we're kind of worried about how high the gas fees are going to be, and the executor, they have to cover that out of their pocket pretty much. So we are going to just stand up just a donation. If you want to send some gas money or coffee money to the executor, send it here. But we just literally issued a token that's not backed by anything, not literally does nothing, no use, no staking, literally nothing. But all we did was just made it so that in the first 36 days, you can mint 369 water tokens. Then after 36, it cuts by third to 123. That cuts by third to 41. And then after 216 days, there's no more. So like we kind of introduced one where like, people that donate some gas money to the executor's gas fee budget, they get a higher rate. But that's not even like a coin. That's like it was mainly for fun. It's literally not like so. It's
so
like
the water token isn't
that we rolled out. So we felt the flexibility to introduce that, because it's like not like the pools, or not like team. It's like kind of more of like a for fun thing.
Yeah.
And
so
like
I haven't
mechanism.
I haven't looked a lot into the water token. So the water token itself, after these auctions, like what's the incentive to hold it?
It's a symbol of your support.
There you go. Okay. Wow.
It was mainly.
I'm surprised you've gotten so much. Last time I looked, it was a relatively meaningful amount. Very interesting.
Literally, it was like, because people were like, oh, because we thought about, because in the past, historically, the Maximus community has donated huge amounts of money to just do stuff. Like with the audit for Maxi, people donated money to cover the cost for that. When I needed to deploy contracts to like the Diamond Hands contracts to ETH-Dub, ETH-F, and ETH, people donated money for that. People donated like $15,000 to send us to Vegas for a conference. Like, so people have historically been very generous donors of some of these, because like we don't want to include any of like the operation costs into it, because then it's like you're pooling funds to perform work. And so it's like entirely, no poly participant is required to cover any costs. It's like everyone covers their own costs. And so just like but we on the side, we just made the water thing just to make it so like,
Yeah.
rather than just someone sending it and we just thanking them like, okay, you now have water tokens, and they just have the awesome features of an awesome logo, an awesome name, and a third inning, which is mainly just a way to make it so that it's just like not minting forever. It's just kind of, and so
Yeah.
people stop sending money to the executor. And
Yeah.
so it's just kind of like, and it was mainly just like a donation bucket to
Well,
help
it
cover the
worked.
costs. But it's
Good for you.
because it's so scarce, and because it's like something where it's like, why would you buy this thing? Maybe that increases like the potential. Like it's weird, like by making it something that is not meant to be a financial asset, it's mainly just like a fun, like, thanks, dude. Like
Yeah.
it who knows what's gonna happen with that, because it's
Yep.
weird. It's like, why, like, clearly the whatever it is, like almost $50,000 in water.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know though. It may cost $50,000 to run the like. Who knows what the gas price is going to be during
You're
this?
right.
The gas for
You're right.
like there may be some weird, like there may be a lot of failed transactions during these
Yep.
these
That's a
bids.
good point. It'll be an advantage to be able to price your bids, your transaction fees higher.
Yeah,
To
or
not
just
have a
or to
failed
be able
transaction.
to tolerate
Yeah.
transactions that don't go through, where you
Yeah.
pay the gas for it to fail.
Yep.
Like, so
Well, that's the most frustrating thing.
I know and it causes people to increase the gas price, and it literally it's like
Yeah.
the self-fulfilling thing. It just makes it worse. But yeah, so the water is we're it's very funny how that one, how that just played out with so far. And
Yeah.
it's weird, like making it like something where it's like we don't even really promote it, like the main promotional, messaging is around poly, because that's like the important one. Water, it's like not quite as important. And it was more for fun. And but it's like got shocking participation, kind of like with team. It got way more participation than I thought. Had I known team was going to get so much participation, I would have made the perpetual pools pay more to team.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in your opinion, what's the biggest pushback? What's the explanation that you've heard for why poly is not a good thing?
More like pre-deciding on a strategy. I think that's probably the most material one, is that like you're just committing to a one particular strategy amidst like a dynamic environment.
Yeah.
Like just choosing that you're going to be buying HSIs and then staking Hedrin and then rolling so like that's the one that's like the most substantial one. There has been questions that people have had about like regulatory compliance.
Yes.
And so my answer to that is that the poly itself is like it's like a general partnership where users bear their own risk and they split the outcome. And since the executor is one, there's no guarantee at all that the executor is even going to generate any type of increased performance. Like the executor absolutely could buy the cheapest HSI with all the budget. And so like they absolutely could. Like there's no like no even suggestion.
I think you've done a good job clarifying that. Personally, I don't really want to critique you that much. I don't know that in the big picture it even matters. I feel like the way that the white paper was written was not necessarily wise when the SEC is accounted for. For example, in the white paper, it was explicit that HSIs would be one, and that in itself is an expectation. I think the chance that you guys are going to get an HSI is almost 100%. But at the same time, there was an expectation created, which the SEC's they're not in my opinion, they haven't really shown themselves in the best interest of people. So I don't expect them to be reasonable. At the same time, I don't expect this project to get their attention just because it's a short-term thing. Like the poly token will continue for a long time, but the actual actions are a short-term thing. It's not going to be $1 billion. Well, maybe it will be, but but at this point, it's not you're not garnering $1 billion worth of funds. I just don't expect it to get their attention. I don't think it's going to be worth their time to focus on you guys. So it's like kind of a moot point a little bit to me.
And also, there are, because like a big thing that helps make like what, because like I don't want to talk too much about like the legal, like the legal opinions that that I've sought after, but one a lawyer that I look to on these topics explained that in general, DAOs are classified as general partnerships as long as there's something that like where the members do some action. And so like by members voting on the bidding budget, it's like they're basically voting what amount that they as a whole are delegating to one external volunteer who doesn't get anything from it. You're not paying them to do the work. They're doing it on their own accord. And like but by participating, you're delegating your bidding budget to that address. And so like, and you're choosing the amount. And so there's like a kind of like a self-determination from all members that dictates the performance of it. And then, also like the thing is that why I'm comfortable kind of being on this kind of, line is that it's like, we have natural law on our side. Like we have honesty and transparency and like, because really the main function of the SEC, while, maybe there's, they do efforts to try to suppress like competitive aspects, their main thing is actually consumer protection. At least that's what they say. And like when you read on their website, they state that, that their things are that they inform and protect investors. Hey, we inform and protect people. We teach people about how to use smart contracts, and we build things that help protect them from fees. We facilitate capital formation. We do that. We allow people to trustlessly interact with smart contracts that pool funds to enable things. We enforce federal securities laws. Well, we don't really enforce laws, but the contracts have very strict rules, and everyone can read them. It says we regulate securities markets. Like, okay, these things kind of regulate themselves through the risk of losing your money on a bad trade, the risk of you losing your money to a scammer, which requires people to be better information. It's like we provide data. Like, okay, there's 100% data transparency. So it's like all the things that they seek to do, it's like we do them. And so
I think
I don't feel,
that's a good way.
Whether or not there's like a technicality, and if that was the case, then perhaps that's the opportunity to assert your human right to broadcast transactions to the internet. And
I think,
and I would, in that setting, I would call upon the people around me to stand with me in that.
Yes.
And so,
good,
I'm not because it's like, there's no funny business here. It's like everything is so literally, I built the thing live on YouTube. It's like, and so that's why, I'm a little probably more confident in that. And because it's like, the executor is a volunteer. They're not in possession of the funds. And it's just doing something mainly for the logistics of it. It's not like, that may be an underperforming way to do it, but it's just the logistical, it's like the general partnership people all appointed one person to do some, it's like you hired someone to make a logo. It's like the same thing. So,
I like what you said a lot about that you're following natural law. I think that's what ideally people would be doing. And that's the thing, that if you are following natural law, like you said, that's what's going to, if you for some reason were having to interact with the SEC, people will back you because of the natural law. And that's something, built inside of people, that they're going to have natural emotions saying this is wrong. If you are actually following it, you don't have so much of a chance if you're trying to follow the letter of the law and play the system. Because people won't want to stick up for that if it was used to harm people by following the letter of the law. But if you're actually intending to help people, the what really matters, then I think what world would you want to live in? Like, I would want to live in a world like that. And I think people recognize that. And I think it's like, do you want to look like you're providing value, or do you want to just focus on trying to actually provide value? The people that are just focusing on trying to actually provide value, I think in the long run are going to be the ones that end up the best in the best position, I guess, in the long run. And that's, I don't know, it's cool to hear you say that. I agree with you.
Yeah. And, and I think you're right too, is that like, the SEC chooses one or two things every year, and then it all takes place. Cause what that whole library thing, LBRY thing or whatever, that kicked off in 2018.
I know that's a bummer for me too, just seeing how long the process tends to take from them. It's just the way it works, I guess. But I mean, it's like them even going after someone isn't necessarily meaning the thing is going to be fully condemned. But the fact that the process goes on for so long, they're really hurting that thing, and the FUD is going to be surrounding it, and that's not really fair.
Yeah.
Too bad it can't be a quicker process, but
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the quick process is something that, puts more tools on the side of the defender. And that's, like smart contracts where you can read what's going on, the built by people that are willing to walk you through every single line and explain every single decision made,
yeah,
and so it's like it calls for kind of that like natural regulation, because like
yeah,
if everyone was getting screwed, then I mean, even that's a form of regulation where it's like, okay, at one point they run out of money and then it stops. But it sucks for those people. And so it's like, and every time, and that's a big problem. And anytime there's a problem, that means that it's an opportunity for an entrepreneur to step in and deliver a
yeah,
solution. And so it's
right.
like,
And man,
that to me is more important than,
I
like kind of
agree
after the
that
fact, like fake formal,
yeah,
protection.
that's
Like
one
we're
of
the ones
my
protecting consumers.
biggest problems with the SEC is fear. They're gonna stop innovation because like the fact that they're defining the Howey test, for example, more broadly than it was originally defined, it just makes people afraid. Like if they can't know how to interpret it, then people are it's going to stop people being creative, and we need that creativity. I feel like that's one of the reasons America has done so well is because we're relatively free. We have the ability to come up with creative solutions. America's been a very innovative country, I think, very much because of the freedom it's had. And the SEC, I think, is stopping this really cool potential we have with decentralization and DeFi and these cool tokens. And the reality is, technology, like new ways of doing things, are experiments. Like they're new. We don't know. We need the ability to fail in
Mhm.
order to find the few that work really well. And if you
Mhm.
stop the whole process because it might fail, or you add fear in there, fear for even trying, then you never improve. And
Yeah.
I I it sucks. Like I feel the world as a whole is kind of in a similar spot right now where governing bodies as a whole are becoming more restrictive, and I think it's I'm hoping we get through this. I hope people
Mhm.
are waking up to how bad this is for them.
Mhm.
There's always the freedom versus security thing where you want to be secure, but in the process you lose your freedom. You don't end up with security or freedom
Mhm.
is the way the saying goes. And it really seems so clear to me that we're really starting to value security and we're going to lose it all.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I mean, it's that macro narrative
Mhm.
zeitgeist, or
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
time that we're in right now, and we are going through a reset.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping we come out the other side recognizing at least some things that I think are truly more valuable than are being recognized now. And I hope the average person learns from this, and I hope the faster we can learn, the better for everyone.
Mhm.
And I don't know how bad it's going to have to get before truly good beliefs become valued again.
Mhm.
And I got to be careful saying that I know what they are. Some of these things seem so straightforward though to me.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I've been frustrated too, just because, like I said, I've seen good projects. There's other outside of Hex projects that I'm involved in, and they've really stopped innovating because of fear.
Mhm.
And they're not as bold as you are. They're they're afraid they're going to go to jail, and they and they're from what I can tell, they are following natural law very well. Their
Mhm.
intentions are good. They're not pre-mining. They're doing so many things right, and yet they're like, we got to stop and hold until we have more clarity. And it's like, what? This is a cool thing. Like this is terrible that this situation is set up this way. I don't blame you guys for being fearful. But at the same time, it's a bummer because the world's probably not as good of a place as it would be if you guys could continue doing what you're doing. But
Yeah.
that's a whole different topic. But
See, I think probably the reason why I like It's like I really almost don't even think twice about all that stuff, because it's like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the SEC and any other like regulatory body, it's like those are just regular people going to their day job.
You're
And
right.
that like you ever, like people at all types of day jobs,
Yep.
maybe they're not the top performers, maybe they're on pills, maybe they're
Yeah.
hungover from the night before, maybe their husband or wife was bitching at them about the dishes that day. And there's like
Yep.
these are people, and like I wouldn't classify them as necessarily high performing, and like
Yeah.
they're just regular people, and like regular
Yeah.
people's are inhibited by all these other factors in their personal lives that like limit their effectiveness. And so
Yeah.
like, okay, like truly how effective can they really be?
Yeah.
And so that's probably why I like don't fear that, because all of the advantages are on the side of the crypto user. It's like, we don't necessarily have the physical force advantages, but we do have some level of digital advantage through where it's like your private key is infinitely expensive to break, but
Yeah.
not for the person that knows
Yes.
that knows the seed phrase and can complete the transaction. And so it's like and they can't just kill you and take your assets. They could kill you and take your physical assets, but they can't.
Yep.
They might stop your assets from moving, which may be good enough for
Yes.
them. But it's not like they can take possession of those assets. And so the whole equation on the ROI of asserting violence is way different than before. And
Yeah.
so that's a huge advantage to the defender of these
Right.
rights as opposed to the aggressor. And so like that to me gives me a lot of hope, and just the ability to, persist. And then anytime there's a problem, like it's like kind of like a cat and mouse game. It's like, okay, they're going to limit, the ability to on ramp easily. Okay, well, shit, they already have been doing that, and that's
Yeah.
kind of the main area they can impact in a serious way, and the
Yes.
area that they reasonably have the right to impact that. It's like,
Mhm.
they're it's like the dollars are their system, and so
Yep.
perhaps they should, they by default they have control over how banks interface with them, and the exchanges as the interface from crypto to the banks, that changes. And so, now, okay, as if that gets too hard to do, now that solution to, for someone to build some type of solution to transfer that value in, and then that
Yeah.
that gets solved there. And then the stuff that's like fully on chain native, I feel like even has greater protection against that. It's like, okay, they're going to censor blocks. Okay,
Yep.
private blocks, or that's the call to action to implement
Yep.
different privacy solutions or move to different chains or different layers and stuff. So it's like always going to be like a cat mouse game. And so like I never think that any like regulation is ever going to just put an end to it. They have to kill people, and if they did, you know what, peak humanity has already come if they're killing people for broadcasting numbers to the internet. Like if they're
Right.
doing that, then I cannot wait to see the afterlife. I wonder what that might be. Like that's the only setting that I would want to, sooner
Yeah.
than my body can't drag on, would want to, is if we're in a world where they're actually ending people's lives for asserting their right to
Yeah.
broadcast numbers to the internet. Like that
Yep.
is, if that's where the world gets to, I'll be on to the next world. See you there.
Right.
So that's,
Yeah.
I don't live in fear of
Good.
that, because it's like, okay, that's just a problem to solve. Maybe I can get rich solving that problem.
Yep.
If the problem gets so bad, perhaps I'll be in the right place at the right time to deliver a solution. And
Yep.
and that's how I can give back to the world. And so
Yep. I
I'm
think that's a pretty cool way to think of it. I do feel that this is a test of blockchain and decentralized finance, the government trying to crack down on it and its ability to withstand, if it can, is actually proving its value. And in a sense, things potentially getting bad, if we can withstand it, is only a stronger reason to hold it, because then you can know that, oh, this country did this and it still worked. And over time, I think we're seeing that it does withstand quite a bit of attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right also that I kind of feel like the world's a vacuum. Like there's common narratives. Sometimes they're true, but a lot of times they're partially true.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some part of the common narrative that's not quite right. People take something to too far of an extreme. I've noticed it tends to create a vacuum for for the people that are correct. Like the worse things get, the better advantage it is for the other people that are right. You can see it in the markets, for example. If everyone is undervaluing a token, the one guy that recognizes it's undervalued, the more other people are wrong, the more in the long run he's going to have something to show for it. And those wrong narratives create advantages for the people that can survive and provide value accurately.
Mm-hmm.
And in the long run, I think they have a lot to show for it. I see it all over the place. And I just see certain people, like this is a really interesting tangent, but like Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate, they're filling a particular vacuum right now. There's a reason that all of a sudden these people pop up and they just suck to them. Like these particular guys are talking to men. There's a narrative that the masculinity is a bad thing. And these two guys, in very different ways, speak to that on the opposite. And there's just not a lot of people putting their heads out speaking to it. And they just get so much attention for it. And I think that that plays out, and it can play out the same way with blockchain and people that are, well, everyone else is fearful, building good projects that are going to come out the other end with a lot of value potential in them.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Do you want to look at the chat here and see what's?
Yeah, let's do it.
And then, are you on any time crunch, or what's your? You gotta.
Up to you. As long as things are interesting, I'm down. So
let's read.
Do whatever we want.
On. So I mean, this was from an hour ago. Oh my God, there's a lot of chat. Someone asked about the million stake in 10 installments and how he plans to pay gas fees.
Yeah, I understand the gas fee argument. I mean, that's going to be interesting to see. How does the value of Hex over time compare relative to the potential increasing cost of transactions? And basically, if I was to wait 15 years, I've basically intentionally or not assumed that it's going to be worth the unstaking fee to unstake those. Of course, those are HSIs, and in the meantime, I have the ability to, for example, turn them in for Icosa. So ask him why he staked in 10 I did it in 10 installments because I have more flexibility. I can, for example, because those are HSIs, if I want to, I could transfer one to a friend. I could sell one on OpenSea. I can give one for Icosa, and I don't have to give 1 million Hex for Icosa. I still have some flexibility with that. And that's why I did 10 specifically. And I'm not too concerned myself. They are each 100,000 Hex. I hope that would be worth the transaction fee. We will see.
Yeah. And so it's good that you did this through the HSIs for sure, because of those options there. And what is also like something that that was just kind of not accidentally built, but like in building Poly, I basically built a mechanism that lets you transfer a HSI into an ERC20, so that like that, so you can effectively convert a native HSI into a stake pool. And so you may not have to bear the gas fee on your own if you say you wanted to end. So say you did a couple to Icosa, a couple on OpenSea, the same mechanism that we built in Poly, I could very easily deploy it where if you have HSIs where you want the Hex, but you want to be able to end them, you could effectively, kind of like sell ownership in it, and then you all split that gas fee together. So maybe you could have, hundreds of people paying for the gas fee together, and maybe it eats into the yield. You can't really get around the eating into the yield from that one. But the gas fee problem, there does, through the thing that I built in Poly, there actually is a pretty good solution for saving, like for people who intend to end the Hex stakes and not just sell them back to Icosa. There may be a way to pool and pool the cost of that end stake gas fee. And so that was a nice side effect of what came out of Poly, was that there may be a big gas solution here that can really help the HSIs that are people are holding. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
you get to the end and like, if you're gonna have to sell some of the hex afterwards anyways, you could at least pool it, and then the impact is a little bit less on each person. And so that is a potential solution
Yep.
that may exist for that. But yeah, that's cool, and that's cool that you like introduce some fungibility to the HSI, with the
Yeah.
splitting into 10, because that's usually good enough. Like you don't need the like decimal level fungibility necessarily. It's
Yeah.
like the 10% is good. People are saying FTX going to zero. Do you know much about what's going on with FTX?
I mean, I think it's worth paying attention to. They're a relatively big player. I don't have strong opinions. There's different narratives behind exactly what's going on. It's really interesting. I don't know that I want to say a ton. I mean, I don't know that I know anything other people don't.
Yeah. It's kind of funny just like how quickly the tides
Yeah.
change. Like just a couple weeks ago, like what Forbes is writing about SBF as being like the Rockefeller of crypto and
Yes.
bailing out all
I
these. It's so
Yeah,
funny how
man. I'm
quickly.
with you there. That just to me reassures. I see it all the time. My ability to predict the future in things that I do not control is always an unknown.
Yeah.
Like no one knows what's going to happen. I don't know that realistically people could have reasonably predicted this outcome, and it happened, like you said, in a relatively short period of time. I just, to me, it's a reason to remind myself to be humble. I don't know what's going to happen, and crazy stuff. Like that's a big example of it, I think.
Big example, which makes me very happy that like, you see it time and time again. The common denominator in all of these, like whether they're like failures or in like like with Luna, for instance, or with like these lending systems, it all comes down to bad debt. It's like if you're holding bad debt, or if you're holding debt on collateral that maybe has some like paper value, but like when push comes to shove, your collateral that maybe you pledged numerous
Yeah,
places.
there's
Uh,
more risk involved than people often are willing to accept,
yeah.
and like you have the potential for a greater upside and the potential for a greater downside,
hmm
and we see the downside enacted too often.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Hex Hoarder asks if the contract bids and wins a 10-year and a 15-year stake. Once the 10-year stake is fully matured, does it restake the Hex for 5 years or just sit there? Yeah, it restakes it. So as long
Oh,
as a stake
I didn't know
ends,
that.
yeah. So if they're like, say we have a 10-year and a 15, and that's all. When the 10-year ends, well, just any no matter as long as it's 366 days left,
Got
it
it.
restakes the hex and the hedron. There's like a restake leftover function
Yeah.
that either just starts a new native hex stake and then schedules its end, or it schedules it to end in the days before the last one. So then at the end, they'll all the hex stakes will end, and then the hedron can be added up until that day 366 until the end mark, just so it doesn't keep extending the minimum stake length day. So just
Yeah.
provided that there's more than a year left, it just like compounds the hex and compounds the hedron.
Good.
So it's kind of cool in that way. Love to see it. Hex wasn't well explained before launch. We really needed the community we have now. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's like, the community came as a result of like the whole experience of it all, and yeah, and it's pretty wild because, by now it's like we all understand, at that time, many people didn't really understand the crypto stuff at all. Like by now we have like years of just crypto experience that we can have a better sense of this stuff. But at that time, like a lot of people were like real beginners to crypto. So maybe their
Yeah.
explanation would have been so good. We already talked about that. Great to see this do streaming. Hit the like button and share the link. Yeah, where can people? I should put this on the banner. What's your Twitter and what's your
Won't Settle Media is my Twitter.
Won't
And
Settle Media
yep.
Twitter, and what's your
All
YouTube?
YouTube is Maxim Broadcast.
Some podcast. Here we go.
Nice.
Got you up there. God, we have a lot of chat. I wasn't even looking at the chat. We were just chatting the whole time. Jawa's in the house.
Jawa.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 most likely, what are the what are the chances that there will be a poly 2, poly 3, etc.? Well, I mean, who knows? You tell me.
It'd be easier for you guys to do the next one than the first one.
Yeah, I mean, it took 5 months to build Maxi and then a month to build the pools. So you're right. It is much easier.
Well, you've already built the code basically. You could probably
Mhm.
reuse it, right?
Yeah, I mean, so like I built it with the same kind of the way I built Maxi is that I built it for like a one and done thing, just to like prove that it works and prove that there's demand.
Yeah.
And then since Maxi was really popular, then we did the pools. And so rather than like trying to make the like Maxi thing like permanent and recurring, we just made it a one and done thing. So that was kind of the approach here is that like, okay, there's gonna be a set budget, we're gonna do it, we're gonna take everything we learn, and then perhaps there can be an ongoing because these Icosa stakes are gonna happen forever. And so perhaps, we'll build something that's ongoing that and pool the Hedrin and perhaps implement a broader range of strategies too. It's like we
Yeah.
chose one simple, relatively low risk strategy with just the holding the hex stakes and holding the Hedrin stake.
Yeah.
Like we kind of just chose one thing there. But perhaps we maybe we do implement some type of like, token holder decision making on implementation of strategy where,
Yeah.
okay, we're going to roll this amount into Icosa and distribute that. Like there can be a whole, like I would probably, if I was to relaunch it, there would probably be some progress made on the, one, just making it where it's like an ongoing thing, and then
Mhm.
two, some type of like more dynamic
Yeah.
strategy enabled.
Possibly include more Icosa in your game
Yeah,
theory or something.
yeah, like that. Where it's like with this one, we probably would have if we had started building this on day one of
Yes.
Icosa with enough
Yeah.
time. There's basically
Yeah.
30 days to do
Right.
it, and so I was like, so that's something that I think that we're really good at is like, while there's a million ideas we have for features and things to add and different dynamics and different games, it's like I'm so eager to just say nope, no more features. Like even if it's a good idea, it's like the baseline idea is already good enough. We don't need to make it that much better.
Yes.
Like everything will just be priced in, like the
Yeah.
benefits, the risks, the reward, everything will just
I think there's potentially wisdom in that, focusing on the things that provide the most value, not overcomplicating it, especially
Mhm.
when you're on a tight timeline. Like you
Yeah,
have to do that.
and especially when the system is complicated enough already.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like I didn't even tell any of my in real life friends or family about Poly because it's like, where am I even going to
I
start
know.
explaining
I know
to them?
that's the funny thing. My wife asks me questions and it's like, I don't know how to answer that question without explaining the whole system.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
well,
That's how my
I do
she
know the answer, but
yeah.
this is gonna take some real focus to explain this well.
How long have you been married?
5 years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It's
Yep. 3
exciting. Yeah.
kids.
Oh, cool. That's amazing. Yeah, I just got married.
Oh, cool.
What is it? 5 months ago in June.
Okay. Congrats, man.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Maybe more than 5 months. What is it now? So July, August, September, October, November. So yeah, 6. Yeah, 5 months. That's right. Yeah, it's great. I think.
Good.
Yeah.
So are you full-time crypto, I'm assuming, or do you have
Yeah, so I
what
do like consulting, work, with both like kind of like investment consulting,
yeah,
related to crypto and like software development consulting too.
okay.
But I mean, lately, like I've really been more focused on this stuff than some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of deep in the weeds in
Yep.
this world. And yeah, what about you?
Yeah, basically full-time crypto. I do have real estate, which I've been just eliminating it. I've been selling it. So,
Hmm.
but my main source of income is related more to crypto than
Hmm.
anything else right now.
Yeah. What type of real estate were you into?
Rentals.
Rentals?
So like, yeah, multi-unit properties and single family homes,
How has
but
that
nothing.
market changed over the last couple of years?
Well, I started purchasing in 2013, and I mean, just like everything else, the value has gone up
Going up.
massively.
Yeah.
Like most of my properties that I've sold, I've doubled the value of what I bought them for,
Mhm.
and that's been good. But I think, I mean, I kind of want to work with the Fed, and
Mhm.
I think like I have some selling now, and I think I'm a little bit late to that,
Yeah.
um, but overall, it's been really good, and I love real estate. So My intent is to get back in later.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm kind of eliminating my portfolio.
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah. It's interesting to see like how, it's like kind of almost like it's like same game, but different, it's like based on the, the risk, the demand.
Real estate's
rate.
has a lot of advantages. I mean, mainly tax advantages. It's one of the most tax advantageous games I think anyone can play. And I think people don't intuitively realize how much farther money goes in real estate than other things. And it's an interesting game. I think it goes well with crypto. I think they're good in different ways. I think they can kind of counterbalance each other pretty well. But yeah, in 2017, I stopped accumulating properties and went all in on crypto. So instead of buying a new house, I was just focusing on crypto. And
there you go. I mean,
so far, so good.
Maybe the timing of the 2017, depending on what month of 2017, but like, the fact that, that you lived until now means that, because so many people, it's like they get in 2017 near the top, then they're salty. So they miss out 2018, 2019, 2020, it kind of gets their attention, but then they're just like goofing off. 2021, they're like, all right, now I'm back in. And then, like, that's a huge number of people.
Yeah, we'll see. I love it. It's a really enjoyable process. And I mean, I figure like if it goes terrible and I have to get a job, well, at least I had a couple years of freedom.
Yeah. And it's, then it's just on to like the next set of opportunities,
Yep.
And so that's cool. Let's see what anyone else in the chat said. People's talking about the bear market going on. Buying the Icosa dip. My Hedrin is still staked, yielding Icosa, waiting to pull the trigger yet on Poly, considering the impact of the auctions towards the staking yield. Yeah, good question. Josh says it'll be a battle of the squids for who will pull their stakes and try to compete in the auctions, and the ones that want to keep their stakes up and collect the yield. Yeah, and I wonder what percent of people are going to mint Poly, because also, I mean, just in general, the last day of these things, it all really stacks up.
That's the way everything seems to be. People wait to the last minute. It's human nature, I guess.
Yeah, because then you see, and also, I mean, we already, because if 86% of the portfolio is staked, then that puts us in the 10% like bonus category of Hedrin staking, and the 10%. So like even and that's significant because while the bigger pays better bonus is quoted as 10%, in reality it's actually 3% bonus that you get net, because the longer pays better is 200%, and so your 200% longer pays better plus the 100% principal, and then the 10% bigger pays better, that's 10% over 300%, and so the net impact of bigger pays better is actually only 3%. Everyone thinks it's 10, but from the stakes perspective, it's 10%. And so, or it's 3%. And so we're already at the quoted bigger pays better bonus level of Hex staking. And from the pools, as soon as it hit that, it just is like a snowball.
So what percentage right now, because I believe people are voting on this, what percentage are you designating for HSIs?
So right now let's see. I'll refresh the page. So there's 400 billion Hedrin in the pool, and 85 billion or 85% is going to the bidding budget. So that's 340 billion Hedrin in the the bidding budget.
So you're getting close to being able to put minimum bids on every single auction.
I think so.
I think it's 380 or something like that. I'd have to look, but you're getting close.
Then you risk holding the bag on a bunch of
which is probably not the best way to go about it, but
also, it's pretty like I don't necessarily want to talk too much on my my perspective on like the like spreading out. There's so many available. And like actually the impact of like
I don't even want to ask you, just because I think it's in everyone's best interest that it remains a secret.
But it'll be quite funny if people just unleash the whole thing
Yeah.
For two reasons. One, which I'm absolutely keeping a secret, although like I really wish I would, because it's less strategic. And it's, but
Yeah.
it's still part of the game.
I
And
know.
then two, like, it's like if you're in that one, then now you can't bid on potentially another one that may be better.
Yeah. If
So
people FOMO at the beginning, use their Hedron, are they going to have it for the end?
yeah,
And
so
it's going to be interesting.
yeah, totally funny. Well, cool, man. See anyone else in the chat? I mean, there's kind of talking about what it would be more relevant to read them as we went. People talking about the auctions, 27,000 T shares in auction.
Yeah, over 500 million hex, I believe.
Yeah, that's the roughly equal to the Maximus perpetual pools. Or no, we had 810, so they're almost there. It's roughly equal to Deci. Deci was about 500 million hex. What's crazy is that like I have a website called hsicosa.anvil.app. That's
Yes.
where I just publish some. It's kind of like my sandbox when I'm trying to do the analysis. I just kind of do it in here.
Yeah.
And well, I haven't refreshed the. There've since been like 1,000 new stakes coming in since the last time I refreshed these. But of like the first 6,000 stakes that came in, it's like 6,000 stakes over the course of 15 years versus the perpetuals, which has 21. And
Yeah.
so the perpetuals have 811 million hex, and the Icosa has now like 500 some million. And what's pretty crazy is that the required units of gas, so regardless of what the gas price is, the
Yes.
number of units of Ethereum gas to end the stakes is 77 billion for all the stakes in the Icosa pool,
Yeah.
versus 41 million in the perpetuals across 21 stakes, because 15 base stakes, 5 trio, 2 lucky, 1 deci.
Yeah.
All stakes that would happen in a 15-year period, like comparing those two, it's something like 1,800 times less gas use on the perpetuals versus all the stakes in Icosa.
Yeah.
So what's crazy is that like probably most of those are going to be forced to just be recycled for Icosa, or just minting their or maybe they just hold it and just mint their Hedron forever and never end the stake, because with so many of those stakes ending, because only so many can fit per block, that like around those days, especially 5,555 days after Icosa launched, you're going to have huge lines of people trying to get their transactions in. And then
Yeah.
it's like wars, because there's priority to getting because you can get the hex first, you can sell the hex first. And so the combination of people trying to race for those blocks to unlock their stake before someone else, combined with them, as of the current block size, two max length hex stakes can fit per block. So 2 HSIs per block, everyone trying to fight for those blocks, pushing the gas price up. The more it goes up, the more hex you have to sell to recoup the cost, which drives the number of infeasible ones up. It's like two things that are both rolling forward. It's like contributing to lower hex price and contributing to higher gas cost. And so like all those ones at the end are going to really be impacted by that. And so that big reason why, what I described to you about the being able to like pool your own HSI, or like sell ownership, fractional ownership in your own HSI. I'm glad that was like as a side effect built through Poly, because I think that could be a big solution at that time, where people can kind of not be stuck solo holding all of those. You can break them up. I mean, there's gonna be some threshold where it's not even worth it, but for ones that are like in the threshold where like it's worth it because you at least captured like half of your yield or something, that one might be worth it. But yeah, it's pretty interesting to compare like the two systems as stake pools, because Icosa is like a pool where they're pooling the stakes, whereas the perpetual pools are like it's pooling hex and holding small numbers of stakes. And so they're kind of like different sides of different approaches to pooling staked hex and creating an aftermarket for that staked hex. It's like our aftermarket is the ERC20 tokens on the liquidity pools on Uniswap. The aftermarket here is the liquidation auctions. And so they're kind of two different approaches to like pooled hex or pooled hex
Yeah.
stake and aftermarket solutions. So it's always pretty. That's kind of how I view Icosa, is like a different way to skin the cat, I guess. Replay game. Oh yeah, people are replaying. People have already started. So yeah, that's way old chat. Let's see if there's any. Java says I would back up Dipcatcher in a lawsuit. Thank you.
Yeah.
95% of Hexans would back you on that one.
I think so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
America has a really big army. That's why France couldn't take their gold. Just inflationary dollar, 1972 under Nixon. Yeah, that's very true. When the capital is physical and requires physical protection, the largest physical arms win. When the capital is digital and the strongest digital protection wins, it's a huge equalizing force. So that gives me hope. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Hi, Dipcatcher. One of your streams about Poly, I think I heard you talking about compounding the Hedrin stake. Is that correct? Yeah. So it starts off with the Hedrin stake. Here on Saturday afternoon, the Hedrin stake will start, and then over time, as the HSIs earn Hedrin, we're going to roll that Hedrin into that original HSI or the original Hedrin stake.
Okay.
Fogrider says, really appreciate y'all taking the time to discuss this. What are y'all's thoughts on possible reasons the Maxi Deci is so far undervalued, in my opinion? Low demand for Hex. Those are just wrapped Hex. And so when there's low demand for Hex, there's low demand for all forms of Hex. And since those are saleable, you see them impacted. 2, there was just so much demand for staked Hex absorbed in the perpetual pools. There's 3 times the participation as the original Maxi. That's kind of absorbed into it. Maxi's still overvalued relative to its net asset value. Deci is slightly under. And then also, now there's like a whole new set of liquid Hex stake that is coming to auction coming up soon. So there's more supply of a similar asset. And also like with Deci and Lucky, in particular, mainly Deci, even though it's earning at the highest rate, there was so much minting because everyone thought they were going to get a quick flip. And since that trade was invalidated, people are unwinding that trade. So a lot of reasons there. Name your top 3 coins. If you could only leave one coin to your wife before you go to war, what coin and why? Wow, that's a tough. It would probably be. It would be Lucky. Has to be Lucky. Lucky, easy choice.
That is a hard one for me. I mean, the way I think of it right now, for me, Ethereum is the least risky, but it has the least potential reward of the tokens that I look at. I think Hex has, there's FUD right now, so I've been saying Hex has the best risk to reward, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think the certainty basically of Hex doing well basically comes from, in my opinion, the fact that the hexagons are locked for so long. It's going to really draw in, I think, good community and reasons for the people that are in Hex to talk well and draw more attention to it, which I think is one of the biggest correlations, I think, and explanations for a project doing well is its ability to draw attention. Emotion, I think, is a huge reason for price. And I think Hex has the ability to draw in positive emotion relatively competitively. So I think those are reasons why I think the risk is lower with Hex. And I think the upside is high potentially. It's still a risk. There's still things that can go wrong. And then I think Hedron right now specifically has the best potential outcome, but I think it's more risky than Hex. And so if I had to pick one of those, I guess it'd be a question of what security do I want to have? And I'd actually be tempted to say Ethereum if I had to pick, but that doesn't mean I'm like, it's just a risk to reward question for me. And I'd probably value security for my wife, so that I'd go more that way. But I'm so glad to be able to spread out and diversify within crypto and not have to make that one decision.
Yeah. That's funny because I guess you had the much more reasoned approach. I was thinking more like, what is like a symbol I want to leave to my wife here?
Oh, good. Lucky. Oh, that's a totally different. Yeah, that's a really good question.
I hadn't even considered the
I need like
risk
love
reward. I'm
token or
like,
something.
okay, what is like a symbol? If
Yes,
I'm
I
going to
value you,
war.
and you can recognize my value for you in the name of this token or something. That's a good
That's
point.
funny. Yeah, I always joke, but also not joke at all. That of all the coins we've launched, Lucky's my favorite.
Lucky token. That's
Yeah,
good. Yes.
I mainly because I actually am now moving to think more that the ideal stake length is 7 years, because it captures 140% longer, pays better.
Yeah.
It cuts halfway through the 15-year cycle,
Yep.
and
You're more than average,
yeah.
accumulating more yield than average.
hmm
Yep.
Yeah, so I've kind of shifted. Like it's fun. I made a like is it because the lucky stake is 2,555 days because that's exactly 7 years. And it's funny you can like just flip and rotate the a five and it turns into two. And so you can like all the 555 stuff. You just like swap the first five with like an upside down backwards
Yeah.
five and it's a two. And so I like I like this. I've grown to like the 7 year stake.
That's interesting.
And
It's creative.
yeah. XLove asked, how important is PulseChain as a new blockchain, and do you believe it is necessary or not? What are your thoughts on that?
I feel similarly in some ways to how I did with Hex when it comes to PulseChain. That way being specifically, I felt Hex was original, addressing specific problems with experience, basically. So Hex was like looking to what has worked and what hasn't. And I think Richard Hart did a very good job in many aspects. Even the adoption amplifier, looking to how can he maximize off of what has worked well so far, and it ended up being relatively original. I think it's a similar approach that Richard Hart has taken with Pulse, in that he's adding some originality, looking to what has worked well, not overcomplicating things. This is not the question, but my biggest concern for Pulse is its ability to iterate and improve over time. I think that is there's a little bit of a difference when it comes to Pulse relative to Hex, because Hex is a sealed project, and I think the code is completed. There's no private keys for it, and that is in itself valuable for Hex. That makes Hex unique, and it's better. When it comes to something like PulseChain, I think over time its competitors are going to be improving, and I think for Pulse to do well, it needs to be able to improve also. And that's one of my concerns for Pulse, is that it might do really well at the beginning, but if it can improve, I don't know how optimistic I'm going to be long term. And then do I think it's how important is it? I think selfishly, I like Pulse because I think it's going to draw attention to Richard Hart, which is going to draw attention to Hex, which is going to draw attention to Hedrin and Icosa, and the whole Richard Hart ecosystem. And like I said, I think attention is one of those really valuable things for price to appreciate. And so I think it's going to be, at least in the short term, I expect it to be bullish for Richard Hart, the Richard Hart ecosystem. So I guess that's important. Do I think it's necessary? I do feel that the transaction costs on Ethereum right now are high, just like we've been talking about. If Pulse can introduce a way for transaction costs to be faster and less expensive, it enables a lot of optionality and potential value. Smaller stakes, for example, in Hex become more of a thing. Smaller players can get in, and that's actually a lot of smaller players, are really valuable. And the ability to not lose so much value dollar cost averaging in, because the transaction costs aren't absorbing your whole like half your value isn't spent in transaction costs. That's a really great thing. I'm curious to see what the transaction costs actually end up being, because there's potential, I guess, arbitrage opportunities. Sometimes people can take advantage of the low transaction costs until they're not low anymore. I'm curious how that will all play out.
Yeah.
Is it necessary? I don't think it's necessary. Like, it's not like Hex or something would fail without it. It's a cool experiment, and I'm glad to have sacrificed for it. I'm really excited to see how it all plays out. Obviously, I really want the best for it. I want it to do very, very well. I think it has a chance to do well, and we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel the same way too. It's like, I view it more as like an opportunity,
Yes.
um, where, because like with the success in like the last cycle of things like Avalanche, Phantom, there was a lot of demand for
Yes.
Solana, these other, BNB. It's like
Yep.
there's a lot of reception to these, Ethereum adjacent things where,
Yep.
where really just the user experiences where you change the network on your MetaMask and you can do new
Yep.
things with new coins. So I think that it's a big opportunity there, and it is a very competitive space too.
Yes.
So that's a challenge, and you're right on like maintaining, like keeping up with like improvements and stuff.
Yeah.
Ideally, it would make it so that its competitive advantage required it to not have to keep up with those improvements.
Right.
Like if it had some type of competitive advantage where like it didn't need to be the best, fastest, smartest blockchain, it just had to
Yeah.
like cater to one particular use case, the
Yeah.
best. In that case, I think so. But also like there's the low fees. Like I think that they'll be low at the start because like I think that the fees are a reflection of the value of the transactions. Where high value, high priority transactions and a lot of those drive the gas prices up. And so with like just it being a new network, there maybe the priority and the value of the transactions are going to be small, and so the tolerance for gas is small, and so the gas fees are going to be low, and also there's going to be less activity because it's a new thing. But it's like if they try to implement too many measures to increase the throughput, every time you veer away from like the track that Ethereum mainnet is on, you don't get the benefit from the development that happens on Ethereum over time. And so
Yeah.
like, like we by making this one a closer copy of Ethereum than what it was originally planned to be, it at least puts us in position to
Yeah.
maintain parity with all the EIPs that roll out, all the releases, and it probably should. But as soon as you start doing things like okay, faster blocks, cheaper blocks, adjusting different parameters like the S load cost, which has impacted Hex, all those things like make it harder and harder. Because like it's like at the end of the day, there's a reason why every single decision is made on Ethereum. It's like they
Yeah.
want to be able to, like the reason why they raised the S load cost, which impacted
Yep.
the Hex staking costs, was because they also simultaneously increased the maximum gas limit per block. So they increased the transaction throughput, and so they had to lever it down to like prevent it from clogging up the system. They had to lever that down in another way. So like, you can't just like unwind it because now it's like they, in response to a larger block throughput, they had to increase that memory reading cost. And then so if you on another chain simultaneously increase the bandwidth and then decrease that cost,
Yeah.
it's like you created a larger problem there. And so like toggling throughput is, I think, a big challenge, and it's not necessarily worth it to me, because to me I think that the responsibility and the burden of decreasing the user's gas cost comes down to the application. Like with Maximus, it's like a wraparound hex that enables to reduce the gas cost of staking hex by 99%. And you do that through like an opt-in. It's like that's like the last layer application level. And so
Yeah.
it's not like it's not having to do anything with the blockchain itself. It's like we can deliver that 99% gas savings without any type of network innovation. It's just
Right.
purely just structuring of how it's done. And so like I think that the responsibility of the layer one is permanence. Like it needs to always be there, and it needs to be reliable. And that doesn't mean cheap. that in some ways means expensive. And so, and I think it's up to, you know, things built on top of it to deliver low cost fees to users that demand low cost fees, where their where they can tolerate a little bit of extra risk in one way in order to reduce the net cost of their transaction. And I think that's like the way that I mean, not, and it doesn't really matter what I think. It's like, to me, logically, like what just makes the most sense, that like,
Yeah.
you know, you want the layer one to be permanent and resilient, and then it's up to like the interface that the user uses to do whatever. It's like up to that to optimize the costs for those users, instead of like
Yeah.
overarching things to try to lower the whole cost. Because you know, it's a tough, you know, those are very hard like engineering decisions to make regarding. And it's like they, you know, they did all that to prepare for the merge, just to prepare for sharding. And if we break part of that, then maybe we won't be. And if the sharding stuff is built around that as the baseline parameter, if we change something in the baseline parameter, that, you know, maybe it makes it incompatible. So
yeah,
I
totally.
think the PulseChain should literally be like as close to copy. Like they should write scripts that automatically commit Ethereum, maybe not automatically, because there needs to be some discretion here. But like,
I think there's some potential value add by, let's let Ethereum test it and then we'll add it. We'll be more secure than Ethereum.
Yeah, because I mean, there's really not like a rush either. Like while the gas fees are high, and it sucks, there continue to be better solutions. So like in this next bull, like last bull market, the things that really impacted people were the swap fees on Uniswap V2 pools and then V3 pools, and then hex end staking. Hex end staking, you know, that's going to suck regardless for all the stakes that existed, because like our solution only works moving forward. It doesn't solve it for the first 2 years of hex staking. But, you know, swapping now with like Arbitrum and some of these other solutions, it's like I do expect the cost that the user bears for swapping. I do expect that to go down, because things like that can be moved to like layer twos. It's not locked in, like a hex stake is like already locked into the layer one. So things like that can go down, which is like the main thing that people complain about, is just like the cost of swapping. That's like the active activity. And so like I think in general, you know, that cost, you know, may go down, but maybe the result of that is that the cost of everything else goes up. And so like native contracts that can't move to layer twos or can't like bundle into contracts that do pooling, perhaps, you know, it's like there's kind of no way around it, you know. And that's, you know, the price we pay for, you know, wanting something that's immutable and can't just be upgraded. It's like, you know, that's one trade-off of that. So
yeah, for what it's worth, also I feel like one of the, and I think this has been talked to before, but one of the most appealing reasons to me why I think Pulse may do well is the fact that the tokens are copied over, and it's an incentive for people to get on the chain. I think people tend to try something, whatever chain they get on, they like to stay on. If it was Binance, like if it was Ethereum, that it's hard to get people to move off of that. I'm hoping that the fact that they have extra potential value on Pulse when it launches, because of all the forked or all the tokens that will be there, is enough to draw people in. I think if you can just get people to go in their MetaMask, go to PulseChain that first time, I think they're probably going to stay with it, and hopefully we get them hooked on Pulse. And that's the chain that they're used to. And I think the hardest part is getting people in, and I think Pulse has a chance to draw people in uniquely, just because of those tokens that are there. And I think that's going to be, I think that's a pretty positive thing for Pulse.
Yeah, I think it's a really strong marketing technique. And I think maybe there's going to be a little bit more, because I mean, you know, with the POW forks, it's like it was there, people knew they were there, but like people were like, okay, that's just like, you know, old stuff.
Yes.
You don't really care anymore. And then, but then like maybe with PulseChain, like maybe there's some allure to it because it's like a Richard thing.
Yeah, well, there's allure, but there's also, I think, a fundamental difference between the Ethereum forks. One of the main ones is I think Pulse was going to have liquidity.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems with those other forks to me was they didn't have liquidity, and even the way to move stuff around is kind of sketchy, arguably sketchy. And I think Pulse will be a little bit more secure, and will have liquidity. and the liquidity is going to be set up for to the advantage of Richard Hart projects, which is just a whole another part of the system. But I think there's reasons to look at what has happened with the Ethereum forks and take conclusions to apply it to Pulse, but recognizing that there's, I think, some meaningful differences between the two, and one of the main ones is there's going to be liquidity there, and I think that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's. I mean, in the sacrifice, there's how much 200 million or so stablecoin, 300 million. I don't know the numbers. Could be larger than that. Huge amount of stable coins that, like, while those could go anywhere, it kind of makes sense that perhaps the intention is to bridge that value over and then make markets, and then
if Richard Hart can come up with a stable coin, I think it would be the third thing. If he can have a stable coin over there that you can be relatively confident you can trade your tokens for and bridge it out with stable value, I think it's got a real chance if he could do that. I don't hear a lot of talk about that. But I feel like that's one of the potential missing pieces that I think could really make it pretty dangerous and valuable as another chain.
Yeah. So, CL says the excitement of an Ethereum alternative cooled down a lot. Very important not to wait too long, let opportunity slip, but maybe there will be new demand again later. Who knows? Yeah, that's why I think, like the demand is seasonal and the excitement is seasonal. And, now it's like, I think also like now that it's entering into autumn, I feel like people are just extra on edge, maybe something with like the sunlight and just their, like hormonal or psychological type of thing. And like physical, like all those things factor into just people's sentiment, and just the world is kind of just like, it's like the whole world is just like backwards land right now. And so it's just like, there's a lot of angst. And so, I think as things, maybe in the springtime, sun starts coming out more, and, there's new hope, perhaps it's just going to, kind of pick right up there. And then, but then it's like, every time there's like a bull and bust cycle, it introduces like new use cases and things that were kind of like starting to pick up in the last cycle. The ones that were able to survive, like really thrive. And so, there's going to be new opportunities, and, so I think the sentiment will change. And then Steven says, other people feeling just like you, we were close to the bottom. Oh, chat. I wish RH and Jack and Dipcatcher would work together instead of working against each other. Less ego would help in getting back on the bigger picture of why crypto exists. I mean, I feel like I'm working, even though like I've never actually spoken to Richard about this. Like I like DM'd with him before, but nothing important, just like chatting. I feel like I'm working, with him in that sense, like, while Poly, doesn't directly pool Hex, it's like a large holder of Hex with HSIs if it wins them. And, all the pools are like centered around it. So in that sense, I feel like I'm, working to, because I view our stake pools as a big scaling solution for Hex. It's like and like if that was compounded with the cheaper costs on PulseChain, if that comes to fruition, if that is actually able to be attained, then it's like double whammy, double gas fee savings. That's even better. And so I feel like I'm kind of working on that behalf, as opposed to, how people perceive Jack to be, be launching that. But we're all gonna make it. See, I push back on that. I think it's more reasonable to say that some are gonna make it. Because like if like just the the reality is that like these are markets, and it's 80% of the gains go to 20% of the users, like just like and so you want to be the ones that do make it. People chatting that. Benny macabre thoughts. Hex is actually a good war currency. If you die, you won't be able to unstake. Bullish. Yeah, I mean, I guess so. In the same way that maybe small stakes are bullish, where they're bullish for everyone else, but they're bearish for the people that have to bear the cost. Thoughts on Team token. Do you know much about Team?
I don't.
Yeah. So Team was the, it was like the growth engine. Well, so Team in general is just like the Maximus DAO Team member token. and it was built to incentivize the growth of the perpetual pools, because team gets kind of like it gets the team staker earnings are based on the size of the perpetual pools. So larger pools, larger payment to team. Small pools, basically no payment to team. So it's like an incentive driven like growth engine. And so team was only mintable with Maxi during a one-time mint phase. During when all the pools launched for 21 days in September, the team was available. So about 90 million, or no, it wasn't. I literally forget how much team was minted. Team dashboard.amble.app. Let's see. It's funny, I'm forgetting this. I want to cite it accurately. So yeah, about 94 million Maxi was converted at a 1-to-1 rate to team. And then team is on like a year-long staking schedule where like you have to lock in. So the staking year for team starts every year in October, and you have to be staked for a full year to earn any of the yield from that year. So it's not like other things where it's like you're earning every day. It's more like you earn on a per year basis. And so that's what team is. And we thought it was a pretty successful growth engine for these second round of pools, because while the number of users went down, the average size of participation went up like 5x. And then the size of the total pools was like 810 million versus 294 million from the original Maxi pool. So we think it was the right call to introduce like this like growth engine, because then people were incentivized to, like, if you're in team, you're incentivized to either mint in the pools or, contribute to the promotion of the pools. And so we saw a huge reach with the pools that we thought was accounted for from team. So yeah, that's what team is.
Cool.
It's like the Maximus DAO staker token. So team earns a little bit from the poly launch, over year 1 and year 2. So, we're trying to really lean into team as like a external growth factor for these mechanisms. Java says, is one of the creators of art for the Watson NFTs. I was able to assign some special art for my wife and son's Watson. That's awesome. That's really cool. Like a big open door to a whole new world and Pulse grand opening. 2 5 for 5 7 years. Let's see if anyone says anything. Hexlove says, show Maxim your market cycle tweet and ask him to choose. I was joking yesterday on stream, like, because people were asking, like, that like Wall Street like cheat sheet where it shows like, different cycles.
Yeah.
Like, where are we? The depression, complacency, anxiety. Yes. And basically, if you like put it on the all-time chart, it lines up with like as if it's like the dead cat bounce, like the first, before it really goes down. But if you line up from just like last year, it like looks identical to the where it looks like we would be in like that like last depression phase. So in like, and I guess because that was like my answer to it, is it like it's everyone's like, where are we on the cycle? It's like we're actually in all places of the cycle at all times. Because, like, what time frame? It's like we're at potentially different areas, and like the vertical scale, you never know. But where do you think we are in terms of the general, like Hex specifically? Where would you say that Hex is on that?
That's really hard to predict. And that's one of the things I think about a lot. And I feel like one of my strategies when investing in tokens is trying to account for what I don't know and protect that. And it's the reason, if dollar cost average has any merit, I think a lot of it comes from the acceptance of ignorance. You don't know where the bottom is. That's why you dollar cost average. And if there's wisdom in dollar cost averaging, I think it's wisdom in recognizing what you don't know. And like, I don't know what's going to happen. I feel like we've had a good drop in Hex, and so I bought Hex at roughly these levels. If we go up from here, I'll be happy. But I haven't gone all in because I don't know if this is the bottom. And I'm kind of waiting for a pretty good dip before I buy in again. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're in a different environment than crypto has been in so far. We've been in a relatively money printing dovish federal environment. The economy as a whole during the life of crypto has been relatively positive. Now we're going into a tightening phase. I wouldn't necessarily expect if the environment is different to have the same result. Like if the fundamental things change, you'd expect the results to change. And so I could see the fundamentals appear to be more bearish. I could see a potentially more bearish outcome than we've had in the past. And so like those are reasons I think that we may go lower. It's really, really hard to predict, especially short-term macro changes. Like you can see things happening and be like, well, this can't continue forever. But when is it going to correct? That is a lot harder to predict. And I mean, right now, I think the Fed is expected to tighten until the second quarter of next year. And just from that, it's easy to think that, oh, we're going to probably bottom a little before the second quarter next year. That to me seems too easy. But it suggests just looking at that fact alone, it suggests we have more down from here, and that we haven't bottomed. But I'm very willing to say I don't know, and I'm trying to base my personal strategy off the fact that I don't know. And if the market provides opportunities, I want to take advantage of them. And if that opportunity is a lower price, I want to take advantage of that, and not be too quick to say that I know one way or the other and miss out on potential opportunity by doing so. If I had to predict, I hate to say it, I would say the second one. But my confidence level is like probably like the second one's pretty extreme. So do I think we're going to go that much lower? I don't know. But the fact that we're going to go lower, I would say is more likely than not. Just from me, and who am I? I'm just a random guy. So if I had to say, I would say we're going to go lower. And this is saying it the day, like right now, I haven't looked really at the hex price today, but yesterday we dropped quite a bit, a good amount. Eventually I would say we're probably going to go lower if I had to say, but my confidence level on that statement is low.
Yeah. And it's, also it's like, this isn't measured in USDC, and then other things kind of factor that. Whereas like looking at the Bitcoin versus hex price, it actually like looks amazing. Like I tweeted it out today. Let's see if I can quickly go back to it. But like I called it bullish hopium. It's like, this actually looks like an entirely different picture, Yeah,
it does. That's really interesting.
This one I think is like, I've always really compared Hex to Bitcoin, because Hex is, I think that Hex is really the only serious competitor to Bitcoin in that reserve asset category. Most other cryptos are competing with Ethereum, or most other cryptos are competing with Venmo. And so, but as far as like a asset that's like a long-term hoard and like something that, especially, and I think that because Hex had like Bitcoin maybe is kind of like gold, but Hex in a way is kind of like a treasury bond in a way.
Yeah.
And like, where that's like the dominant global reserve asset or treasuries. And so that's why I think Hex has an advantage there. And, kind of starting, like if Bitcoin was to launch now, perhaps at least Bitcoin, the token, maybe not Bitcoin, the network, but like perhaps Ethereum would have been a better place to do it than on its own chain. And so I think that Hex kind of has some of those advantages. And so that's why I mainly kind of compare it to Bitcoin. But yeah, I mean, it looks way more bullish on this one, but that's because, Bitcoin's also going down. And so, and what's crazy is that if you measure like up until, I wish the line was still there on my chart, but like basically the same scale from like this move up to like this move up, that would actually take us to to flipping the Bitcoin market cap. Is if we hit I think it's something around like this, like this level here.
Yeah.
So it's, everything is just everything in crypto is just bad now. And so that makes kind of amplifies the feeling of badness of Hex. We can kind of put it in Hex in perspective amongst crypto native stuff, and especially with like Bitcoin as like a primary competing, direct head use case competitor. It's like, we're down off the highs, but it's like, we're basically just like we basically just double bottomed off of this like prior all-time high.
Yep.
And that's, you know, kind of a positive sign, I think, relative to Bitcoin. Who knows what happens to Bitcoin, but
Yeah.
I think is quite positive. Let's see if anyone else in the chat, because I actually do have to get going here pretty soon. But
yeah,
man, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else you wanted to share, or?
No, I appreciated the chat. This was enjoyable. It's cool to get to know more people in the community. I've really appreciated that ability. And I've appreciated our talk. So
Yeah,
thanks
man.
for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, cool. So I guess thank you everyone for joining us today. We had about 100 people watching the whole time, so that's pretty exciting. Usually I'm getting like, maybe by now it's like usually like 30 to 40 people watching. So
Awesome.
thank you for the boost. We had the Maxim broadcast boost today on the channel. So thank you for everyone who's watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on both my channel and Maxim broadcast on YouTube. Follow us both on Twitter. His is Won't Settle Media. Mine is Tonto Nomanai on Twitter, or Dipcatcher. You can find it that way too. So yeah, Poly, we'll give one last update on the Poly minting. We have currently about, see if the numbers have gone up since last. The gas price has been so high today that I saw a slowdown in minting. But so far we have 401 Hedrin pooled into Poly, which gives us a bidding budget of 341 billion Hedrin. 12,622 water has been minted with 34.21 ETH. So the executor has a healthy gas budget that will help them weather any storm during the auction. Who knows what craziness is going to happen. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be back soon. Thank you, everyone.